or Galio to come out from the Misfits support. It would be very surprising if they lock this one in, because you're then kind of pushing Misfits to go towards that Galio bot lane. But I guess Splyce is saying, you know what, we're a little bit more afraid of you getting your hands on this, and then insta-lock Vayne for Kobe.
That's not something we've seen traditionally. Lucian, known as a lane bully, picking the Vayne, who tends to be weaker in the lane, is a very brave move. But we saw what Kobe can do on this Vayne pick last week up against SK.
He had a great Vayne performance last week. Kobe has really risen to the spotlight as the pressure has fallen on our teams here in the LEC, and who doesn't love to see AD carry playing Vayne? Really exciting stuff. We'll see how the matchup goes as we get into game, because it's certainly going to be a difficult one. But Misfits going to take a bit more of a safe approach now by blind picking the Lissandra. Very safe into most matchups, typically played in mid, but can be flexed to the top side of the map as well. But with no major bans being focused towards mid lane, Orianna would be the first pick that I'm looking at for Humanoid to kind of answer that champ.
And something else we have seen sometimes is the Zoe pick. I know Humanoid's played that a couple times this split, but as you say, something a little bit safer into the Lissandra makes a lot of sense, but that's a bully bot lane. Forbidden with a sly smirk on his face as he locks in the Fiddlesticks.
Wow.
Holy moly, that's exciting stuff already.
Now, we are assuming that the Fiddlesticks is going into the bot lane. Typically, when you pair it up with a lane-dominant AD carry champion like the Lucian, you can generate a lot of pressure. His little crow thing that comes out offers a lot of damage, can be very obnoxious, offers a lot of wave clear as well. I think is very interesting to see. And remember, it can go jungle. I'm not expecting it, but Maxlaw has played some crazy stuff in the past. For now, we will assume that it's in support, but we are seeing the Azir answer coming out from Humanoid as well. I want to say that this is the first Azir of the LEC so far, this split medic, and it is a very good pick into the Lissandra as well. We've already seen it over in the LCK a few times. The range advantage that you have over Lissandra means you can farm pretty safely and you outscale as well. So it's a pretty solid pick overall.
It is the first Azir that we have seen in the LEC, as you say. We started to see it sort of come to the fore in solo queue on 9.4. Some people playing Conqueror, Hail of Blades as well, a possibility, but we'll break that down a little bit more as we get into the game. Jumping into the second ban phase, Jax removed, Rek'Sai taken away as well by Splyce. So Splyce thinking that Fiddlesticks is going to go towards the bottom lane.
Right now, that is what it is implying. What else are we looking at the ban table? Splyce, remember they have first pick on junglers, so it doesn't really surprise me that they're looking to ban away priority junglers for now. It could also be more of a target ban with the Rek'Sai, given that Maxlaw does love to play that champion, one of his staples from back in the day, and something that he put a lot of priority on last week, even though he couldn't make a lot of early game action happen.
With the cannon ban as well, away from Soaz, just pinching out that top lane pool a little bit, but you still have some of the more traditional tanks up there if you want them. Could go for the duelists as well. We've seen Chachi really rise to the fore in terms of Splyce's decision-making process when the game goes longer. So
with a Jax ban and a Renekton ban, this to me indicates perhaps something like an Aurelia could be something that Misfits is thinking of right now. Yorick is another potential because Renekton can outbully him during the early laning phase, whereas Jax outscales him later on. Both something to consider. Even though Yorick did receive some nerfs, I believe it was on this patch as well. The Maiden took some damage, which means the 2v2 is a little bit weaker. But Splyce, they're going for mid jungle top flex pick. Xerxes has played a lot of Aatrox in the jungle so far this split, but we do know that it can obviously be played up in the top lane.
And that's what I like about the pick as well, because I was wondering, do you save your jungle counter matchup for last? Do you save your top counter matchup for last? Picking the Aatrox gives you that little bit more versatility coming into the final picks here, but there is the Yorick lock-in for Misfits. Good prediction on that one. With the Renekton ban, with the Jax ban, it makes a lot of sense.
It certainly does. So it wouldn't surprise me if we actually saw the Aatrox go up into that matchup, because you can bully out the Aatrox at early levels, but perhaps perhaps Splyce have something else prepared. There are a couple of options that you can go for in terms of outscaling. Fiora is something that comes to mind, but I don't know if they feel confident enough to have Chachi play out. The really fascinating thing here is that we have a Camille locked in. Now remember that she lost the stun onto monsters with her E, which means that her jungle clear is a lot weaker than before. So the only exception here, Medic, is if that's a Camille support and a Fiddlesticks jungle, but we're going to assume that it's not for now.
I mean, I've seen Urgot jungle in the LEC. It could quite easily be a Yorick jungle. You never know what we're going to get, but it will be the first time Maxwell's played that this split. Of course, one of his historically most played champions in the form of the Camille in the jungle. The final pick was Poppy for Chachi in the top lane. So it is going to be an Aatrox jungle once again for Xerxes.
Okay, so looking at these compositions, Splyce, They've gone for very much a team fight composition, no real surprise. I love seeing this from Splyce because I think that is where they find the most success. They have a lot of talented players, there is a lot of experience on this roster, and they're getting much better at being proactive in the mid game, forcing these fights when it matters around their spikes, and they're very good at it as well. Whereas Misfits, they've set themselves up a little bit more of a skirmish, split-pushing comp. The Yorick will scale nicely into a side lane later on into the game. The Lissandra with the teleport can also move off onto a side lane. And with the Camille, with her mobility thanks to her E, she can actually move quite freely and attack these side lanes during the mid game to generate these 2v2s, 3v3s, maybe even 3v2s that can go in their favor. So I'm expecting Maxwell to be pivotal if Misfits want to get ahead in this game. And I expect Misfits to play around the bot side of the map with the Lucian, with the Fiddlesticks. Let's see if Misfits go back to their first few weeks' style of play, and if it can net them a very important win against this team fight heavy Splyce composition.
Monumental game for Misfits here. Although I don't think they're guaranteed out if they lose this matchup. It'll be a very hard mountain for them to climb. They'd have to beat G2 tomorrow. They really need 2 wins in this final week of the LEC. Splyce still battling for that second spot as well, alongside Vitality, alongside Origin. They don't have an easy weekend either, Vedius. Misfits and Fnatic on their docket. So a win here would set them up in good stead. On to the Summoner's Rift for the first game of Week 9.
So the very first thing I want to quickly talk about was, we talked about Azir, first time in the LEC that we're seeing. He's actually running Comet.
Oh.
So that's a little surprising. You already talked about it, things like Conqueror. I've even seen some Hail of Blades Azir as well, because it's very much built around his W and the attack speed that it generates. But when you're going for something like a Comet, it's very much more focused towards a poke style of build. And remember what we talked about was that in the matchup, Lissandra is quite a short-range champion. And the thing about Azir is, even though he's had his range nerf a couple of times, he's still very difficult to get at. Those soldiers get in the way, they make it very difficult to close that gap, and what he can do is he can basically just out-poke you from a distance, and he can play relatively safe. So he's looking to just generate a little bit of pressure and just be very obnoxious up against this Lissandra during the laning phase, where he will eventually outscale. The 2-3 items is really where he hits his big power spike. Once he gets that completed Nash's Tooth, is when this Azir really starts to turn on as a champion.
We talked about how Splyce want to get towards those sort of 2-3 item team fights. That's when, as a composition, they really start to excel. Kobe will be looking for, Blade of the Ruin King, Ginsu's as well on that vein, can really come online earlier than she used to, at least in terms of pure chronological time. But I do want to have a little look at the bottom lane as well, because this Fiddlestick support is not something we conventionally see. And we wondered, with the first pick, Lucian, how much pressure Misfits would be able to put onto the Splyce bottom lane.
Well, you can already see a lot of pressure being exerted. The farm not going that way for Hansar right now, as he already has missed quite a few. But you can already see that by using the Dark Wind on the side of Fiddlesticks, not only is it very effective poke because of the amount of times it bounces, but it also acts as an effective wave clear tool as well.
And you can see Norscarin realizing they're probably going to be poked out a little bit in the lane, has gone for the heal on the Braum here as well. Cleanse for Kobe will get him out of the Fear, will get him out of the Lissandra as well. And just gives you that little bit more security on the vein.
It certainly does. I think it's very valuable as well. Gorilla will be taking Terrify as his second point, so he has that extra bit of CC. But I also want to draw attention to the minimap medic, because you will notice that Camille went from red straight into the enemy blue, very much playing towards the bot side of the map. Maxlaw, very well known when he played this Camille for setting up these early game ganks, especially around the bot side. But he just wanted to steal away that blue buff, deny Xerxes as much early farm as possible. And now he's going to move back up towards the top side, so he's not going to actually split up the jungle for the time being.
Right, if you can get 3 buffs, you might as well try and get 3 buffs on the Camille early on. Does scale relatively well with items as well, but a very strong early ganker, so we need to keep our eyes on exactly where Maxwell does track. Looks like Xerxes might be trying to sneak down towards this bottom side. He's got into this bush without Misfits realizing, and Misfits will always push up this lane because of that Dark Wind, because of the Light Slinger passive from the Lucian.
That's hit level 3. That's a big wave, though. I don't know if they can afford to go for this gank. They're going for it.
Oh, Hansama able to dash out of the chains, so... As you said, it was a big wave, would have cost Splyce a lot,
Look
but...
at how much Kobe... Look at how much damage Kobe ends up taking off that minion wave. Not the most ideal, but they really wanted to try and make something happen, but immediately Hansam and Gorilla back on the offensive. But Kobe doing very well in lane, slightly ahead in terms of farm, so he's looking pretty comfortable.
Should be okay for the moment. Eyes now go towards that top lane, of course, as Chachi has been a pivotal player for Splyce across the last few weeks, and he's playing the Poppy into Yorick matchup. Now, you said Misfits banned out those Yorick counters in the draft phase. Does Poppy really give Splyce anything to try and counteract that Yorick?
So I don't think they've picked Poppy for the matchup specifically. When I look at how this Poppy fits into this composition, I look at the, oh, okay, so this is a cool new interaction that I literally just learned about. He can also block the little ghouls that tried to jump on top of him. So I love that, but when I look at Poppy into that composition, you can see the Camille jump. You can also see the Lucian dashes. I feel like that there's a lot of mobility on the side of Misfits that Poppy just does a really good job of dealing with. And on top of that, his ultimate is really good and just causing a lot of disruption and chaos. But the main reason I wanted to draw attention to it was because Vizicachi is one of the OG Poppy players. This was the champion that helped him even qualify for the EULCS back in the day, and whenever it is in his hands, he always finds success with it.
All of Misfits coming down towards this bottom side. You said you wanted to see them play through the bottom lane, get that Lucian and the Fiddlesticks ahead. They just clear out the vision. It was good awareness from Splyce to realize that that could be happening. Just as a note for everyone watching at home, the POV cameras will return in a few minutes as our engineers address a minor issue with the cameras. So that's the reason we don't have the player cams on screen at the moment. I'm sure we'll get it sorted for you in just a second.
Thanks for that update, Medic. We now see Maxtor and Xerxes eyeing each other off in Xerxes' half of the jungle. The problem for Xerxes right now is that his mid laner won't be able to offer assistance. It is Febiven that has priority in the lane right now, as Chachi takes a not so favorable trade up towards the top side of the map. Scary thing about Yorick is if you ever get trapped in that little cocoon, that little pit of death, Yorick does a lot of damage, especially if he has those graves up as well. And we see a bit of action down bottom.
Hansama almost stunned up with the concussive blows, but won't be. You can see Kobe was feared away from the exchange, meaning that he couldn't get those final auto attacks down. But Hansama taking the bad side of a trade there. It looks like Kobe has already had the chance to back his double dagger alongside his Doran shield, whereas we haven't seen Hansama or Gorilla get back to base and start spending some of that gold yet.
Okay, just having a quick look back at when exactly he did choose to back. Oh, so it was actually very shortly after the play towards bot happened, and they were being threatened under their tower. So very cheeky back from him. I guess he assumed that Hansama had already had an opportunity to go base, but they didn't decide to take it. So he will have that slight item advantage along with the potions as well.
Just looking across the board, it seems relatively even in CS in most areas. Bot lane, 4-5 CS difference. There's a bit of a discrepancy in mid with Febiven being 10 farm up. He is running the teleport, so does have the ability to push out the wave, teleport back in. And that's probably where that CS has come from.
Well, it also comes from at very early levels, as his wave clear is not the strongest. He doesn't have the greatest amount of damage, and also he only... Because you can't hit all the minions at once versus Lissandra, you just can't clear those minions as fast. And underneath the tower, Azir isn't the best champion at clearing. So I think that Febiven has just invested all of his resources into just pushing. This then allows Maxlore to invade in the enemy half of the map, try and get some jungle pressure down as well. And you can see it right now. He just throws out that Q, he hits the entire minion wave, and that generates a lot of pressure.
This is super cheeky. They thought they were going to back, but they haven't done it. The Veer comes up, Norscaren's so low, he's used the heal flashes away, but Hansama on the chase! Uses his own heal, the Ignite comes down, it's Kobe looking for two, only get one out of it. But that was very cheeky from Misfits.
And Misfits, they find themselves first blood in this very important matchup against Splyce. They find it in the bot lane as well, and it's Hansama who picks it up. Fantastic stuff for Misfits, this is exactly what they need, and Maxwell, he's going to secure even more as he steals away the blue buff.
Said you wanted them to play through bottom lane, that is exactly what Misfits did. Did burn a lot of summoners, but got equal amounts of summoners out of the board from Splyce as well. Steal away the blue, have about 1,000 gold lead now. Misfits in a strong early position, but so as maybe a little bit overextended here as Xerxes going to come through Fog of War. Chachi was taken quite low from that first trade. The Maiden is here as well. Xerxes is level 6, so as will flash away. The chains won't pull him back. And Xerxes takes a lot of damage out of that Maiden as well.
Even after the nerfs, Maiden still being very obnoxious. As you rightly said, they got the summoner spell out from Soaz. He's going to be forced to back away, but let's have a look at how this play happened. As you identified, it kind of gave the impression that they were backing, so Norscaren and Kobe just wanted to push out the wave. Instant fear into stun. Maxlore, he actually gets condemned away by Kobe there. That almost saves his support's life, but unfortunately for him, Hansama still has the mobility to chase that one down. A lot of summoner spells were used, so they could look for a potential gank down towards the bot side of the map, and while it would relieve some of the pressure from Kobe, it is still a very difficult lane to gank. With Gorilla still having flash, no summoner spells on the side of Norscaren or Kobe, Splyce may just choose to lead this lane and hope for the scaling aspect later on.
That's the thing, if Hansama uses this small item spike he has in terms of the recurve bow and Bilgewater Cutlass just to continually harass, you never have to like flash fear. You're never going aggressive in that lane. You're just continually poking Cobbin or Scaring down, forcing him back under the tower. You can even take slightly negative trades because you know you'll heal up quicker from the Bilgewater. So I don't think Misfits have to try and make big plays towards this bottom lane. Just keep chipping at that tower, get the Cloud Drake, get the priority, and start to use this bot lane advantage to snowball your lead.
So right now, Misfits sit in a very comfortable position. They have an over 1,000 gold lead, and they're looking happy. But here's Xerxes. We talked a little bit about it. Could he come back down towards the bot side of the map? He's just hanging around right now because he knows that Humanoid has just gone back to base. They have no vision in the river, and there is the potential risk of a dive. So he's just saying, you know what, guys, I'll stay here, keep you safe just in case anything happens. Misfits generating a lot of pressure in this early game. I'm surprised that Lissandra has this much priority in the mid lane in the Azir versus Lissandra matchup. I always thought that as the levels started to come through, once Azir like gets an item or two, then it would ease up a little bit, but Featherman, he is not relenting in this early game.
I mean, we are still a little bit short of that first real item breakpoint for Humanoid. He's only sitting on Sorcerer's Shoes.
So this is what I expected to happen, you see? But Featherman coming in, won't use the roots. Gorilla was there, gets spotted out, has the cleanse on Humanoid as well.
An important point for Gorilla, as we will look at the items in just a second, is the fact he's gone for the mobility boots before even completing his Frostfang. So he wants to be roaming around, he wants to be trying to make some plays happen in terms of getting that fear off, getting into these other lanes, maybe even grouping up with Maxlord to look for some 3-on-1 ganks towards that middle lane.
And what's important to remember is that if you're a Misfits fan right now, you can be very happy. Misfits have played exactly the way that they needed to, given the win conditions of their composition.
Okay.
Soaz has had a lot of freedom in this top lane, working very healthily towards this Trinity Force, and he's only going to get stronger and stronger as the game progresses. Still a very strong duelist, very strong off on a side lane, and is someone that you're going to have to respect. Featherman has built up a pretty solid advantage in the mid lane, and the bot lane of Misfits has an advantage. So come the mid game, Misfits is going to look very good. Remember that Splyce, what they want to do is they want to team fight a little bit later on, and what the challenge is when you have a team fight versus a split push comp is forcing the split pushers to group around an objective. And right now, Misfits have such good vision control that it will be difficult for Splyce to really try and force anything. But once these towers start to drop, that's when Misfits will truly be tested to see if they can maintain pressure without being forced to group up to fight this potential 5v5 against Splyce.
Because that's when the split push comp really... That's when the strategy is actually enacted a little bit more. Like, you can get an early lead, but you have to be able to keep that vision control up, spot out how Splyce are roaming around the map, how they're trying to force the plays. And Splyce, on the other hand, will just try to wait for those 1-2 items. We talked about how, in terms of team fighting, you want 2 items on the Azir, maybe 3. You want at least a Ginsu's and a Blade of the Ruin King on your Vayne before you can really do too much. So stem the bleeding for the moment. It's something they've done very well across the course of the split. And if they can continue to do it, they still stand a good shot in this game.
So holistically, Misfits have built up an even better lead now because they've been able to take 2 plates in mid, 2 plates in bot, and 2 plates in top. So getting all that extra gold into all those solo laners is definitely a big advantage. You can also see that Maxwell has a CS advantage over Xerxes. He's been ganking and farming, and now he's found Visitachi.
Puts Chachi into the Hexagol Maiden. Xerxes on his way here as well, but Chachi already very low. Goes gold, and Xerxes trying to answer, but the Maiden should do the damage. Chachi flashes across the wall, so is low as well. Down to 200 HP. Here comes Forbidden. Has the blast going to get in. World end up pop by Xerxes. He'll get caught underneath the tower. Forbidden with the flank. Are they going to go for a little bit more here? As they could go for the dive under the tower, but they decide against it for the moment. Want to push up that wave. Norscaven on his way. Forbidden tanks up the tower, jumps in with the Ring of Frost. Doesn't have the damage. Chachi knocks him back. They get one. Maxwell's going to go down to the tower on the top side, though. Taken out by Xerxes. It's a 1-for-1 trade in the top lane.
Ooh, very close stuff there. Misfits, they wanted to commit to the dive, but they didn't have the minion wave, so it was always going to be risky setting up that play. And unfortunately for Misfit, it only ends up being a 1-for-1. They do get a couple of summoner spells off the back of it, but while all that has been happening, the bot lane is still pushing in favor of Hansama. Norscaven went up towards the top lane. Gorilla and Hansama will know this, so they're sieging onto these objectives, and Kobe forced to play back at the risk of a dive.
1,000 gold difference between those 2 AD carries now because of those plates, because of that kill. Kobe forced back once again. Another plate's going to fall here as well. Norscaven might be able to get in range just to block it up with the Unbreakable, but it won't. Turret plating goes down. That's 4 in the bottom lane for Misfits. Across the board, they have taken 7 plates to 1. in favor of Splyce.
And that's pretty much where all of the gold lead is coming for right now for Misfits. So let's have a look back. Maxlaw is on the Rift Tower. He started it. They had priority mid. They had full vision control towards the top side. Soaz is calling to his jungler, hey, I think we can catch Vizichachi out here. They lock him down. Vizichachi misses his ultimate as well, very crucial, but then the stopwatch comes through. And the moment Xerxes arrives, Maxwell realizes, okay, I'm way too squishy for this. I can't commit, so I'm going to have to flash out. And Xerxes would have stuck in the fight if Featherman wasn't on his way up as well. But then we end up in this situation where it's a 2 versus 2, low health bars, Featherman flashes in. They have 2 separate targets, but they think, you know what, with their HP bars, we can just each get a solo kill. But then Norscarin comes in with a very clutch heal to keep Vizichachi alive, while Maxwell ends up trading 1-for-1 against the enemy jungler. So really, in that situation, that was kind of the best case scenario for Splyce.
Thank you, observers, for showing us that that tower did fall in the bottom lane. A 2,300 gold lead now for Misfits, coming up to the 15-minute mark. A very strong early game, and it's kind of reminiscent of what we saw happen from them in the first few weeks. You know, they played through bot, they got their advantage through that, and now they move their bot lane up towards top, and they can continue to try and put Splyce on the back foot.
Maxwell's even made his way up towards the top side, and this also means they can start off the Rift Herald. Yep. So Misfits playing this early game extremely well, and all I can think of is, if you're a fan of Misfits, you're like, where has this Misfits been for the second half of the split? A proactive early game jungler, the bot lane getting themselves ahead, the 2 solo laners holding their own, even building advantages. Everything looking great for this Misfits squad so far. Featherman even teleporting in to add that extra bit of security. So far, they have full control over the early game.
It's kind of a story of Misfits' second half of the split for the last year or so, though, because I was digging through the numbers. I looked at it in spring 2018, they lost 4 of their last 5 games. In summer 2018, they lost 6 of their last 7 games. Here, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. This is a lot stronger, but there seems to be something about Misfits and the second half of the split that doesn't seem to click.
Oh, it certainly doesn't. And remember, Splyce aren't out of this yet as they set up a dive towards bot.
Soaz forced away, Xerxes on the chase there as well. Humanoid gets in, shuffles him back, and Soaz is going to be caught out. Rift Herald used top. Splyce get an answering kill down towards the bottom lane.
But with 3 members being sent bot, Misfits say, well, you know what, we can commit the Rift Herald mid, and this is overall going to be a big advantage game for Misfits as they take the top tier 1. They're going to take the tier 1 in mid. Corbett and Norscarin are forced to answer the mid-wave push, which means all that farm is being lost on the top side. So this time, that isolated death from Soaz, definitely worth it for his team.
Splyce trying to find a way to answer the Misfits' pressure, but Misfits getting a lot more out of every single trade. 2,500 gold lead, or thereabouts. We're starting to see first completed items across the board as well. Proto Belt on Forbidden, Blade of the Ruin King building towards Black Cleaver on Han Sama. It looks like Soaz is going towards the Trinity Force, as you would expect on that Yorick. And the sooner they get these first items, the sooner they can start looking at that Yorick as a split push threat, the better it is for Misfits.
It certainly is. And Misfits, by taking down all the outer towers this quickly, it opens up the map so much for them, and it makes it so much easier to play this 1-3-1 style. But it's at this point in the game where things kind of start to slow down a little bit, get a little bit harder, and often, if you're a solo queue player at home and you have this kind of a lead, it can be a struggle to know what to do next. So my advice would be, what you want to do is take as much as possible. In the wise world of Leonidas, give them nothing, but take from them everything. And by that I mean, go into the enemy jungle, set some vision down, and you're not really setting up for an objective, you just want to take the jungle camps. You want to know exactly where or what they're doing, what they're up to, and the more gold you can deny, the easier it is as they find Humanoid in the mid.
Humanoid caught out, cleanses away, Hexagon in, was shuffled away from it, Forbidden there with a flash in the ring out of Frost. And it's an easy enough catch on the Splyce mid lane.
Really good punish there from Misfits. Humanoid, he doesn't have his mid tier 1. He didn't have his flash available. There was a lot of single target CC, which means that he was forced to use his cleanse very early. And Misfits, they find a successful pick. They're going to keep that 3,000 gold lead. They're going to look to pressure these tier 2s, and note how they are stealing away these camps, getting this deep vision in, and just making it hard for Splyce to really earn any gold anywhere.
Just take away as much as you can. Also, when you look at Splyce trying to defend these towers, if you take away the Azir, their wave clear is not that much. You know, Vayne very short range, Poppy not the best at clearing waves quickly as well. And it makes it very hard for them to stop any advances towards their towers. Let's have another look at this.
So keep your eyes on the mini-map here. You'll notice that, unfortunately for Humanoid, he didn't have any vision in the river, nor did he have pressure anywhere else on the map. There's just a classic overextension in the mid lane, thinking that you're safe to approach the wave, but you should assume that Misfits is going to push and you should wait for the wave to reach you. They didn't, and he ends up getting punished. But again, what we want to reinforce is that Splyce do have a scaling comp. When you draft Vayne, Azir, you are committing to the late game. And by late game, I mean 2 to 3 items, right? So that's kind of the point at which Splyce is waiting for, and they just need to kind of hold the line. That's their goal, that's their objective. They just want to buy as much time as possible, wait for their carries to turn on, because they have really strong team fighting. Aatrox, extremely obnoxious. Poppy mitigates a lot of mobility on the side of Misfits, can add a lot of disruption and chaos with all the utility that she can provide. And in terms of damage, Azir and Vayne at 3 items, very few carries can really match that. So it's a very strong 5v5, 4v4 style of comp. So the timer is on for Misfits. They have a gold lead now. They want to try and maintain this. They want to keep pressuring it. Whereas for Splyce, they're just trying to buy time as much as possible.
Okay, so you said Misfits kind of want to take away as much from the map as possible, take away those jungle camps, keep the pressure onto Splyce, but eventually they have to start looking at these towers as well. Yes. Is it just about setting up deep vision so you can get to these towers, or is there another step that Misfits will be looking to do?
So what they'll primarily do is, actually this is a great example on the minimap, you'll see how Yorick has pushed in bot, forcing Vizicachi to catch that wave. This has created a window where he can now group up with his team, and Misfits could look to make a play, because if they can get the teleport out from Vizicachi, then it becomes even easier for them to actually force this Baron and then force Splyce into a situation where, even though they want a team fight, at this point in the game, Misfits is just stronger. And if you go for a fight right now, you're not going to be in a position where you can win it. So they're going to be looking for these picks. They're going to be trying to force summoner spells out from Splyce. They're going to try and put as much pressure on them as possible to make a mistake, with which then Misfits can look to punish with the goal lead that they built up for themselves.
And look towards that Baron as well. We saw how deadly it can be last week in their game against Schalke. Probably the worst Baron call I have seen in a very long time. Here, they seem to be a bit more methodical. They seem to have just heeded the wise words of Moose in the week, going by the numbers to set up towards that Baron. Once again, bot lane pushed in by Soaz, can try and work with the rest of his team to get vision around this Baron. Splyce, 3,000 gold behind. They're starting to get their first items first in a bit. You have 2 items now on Humanoid with the Morellonomicon, with the Nash's Tooth, so he is getting towards that breakpoint on the Azir. Maybe another half, another full item before he can really start taking over team fights.
Yeah, for sure. Hit the nail on the head there, Medic.
I borrowed Poppy's hammer to do it.
So I'm just look, as you can see, the game is slowing down, and this is where you start to get a little bit worried for Misfits, because you're looking at the map and you can see, okay, they've got decent vision control around the Baron. Splyce have had to invest their vision into their own half of the jungle, which is always a good sign, because it means that they're too afraid to move even through their own jungle.
That's a lot of vision that Splyce have in their own jungle.
They're just like, you know what, we need control over this part of the map so we can at the very least approach waves. There's no risk of a flank. We want to make sure we're getting as much farm as possible onto the Vayne. You can also see that the Azir utilizing his turret to buy a little bit more time, make it difficult for Misfits. So see them turn the pressure on. Training Force almost being completed now for Maxwell. That's another big item breakpoint for them. He's going to solo out the Infernal Drake.
I'm interested though, because Splyce have said, okay, Chachi, don't answer this bot wave push. Come up, get vision control with us around the Baron, and then go quite late towards that bottom lane to try and answer this. And Soaz actually might even be able to get the whole tower here before anyone from Splyce can really answer. Chachi's on his way, so's the Azir. Maybe they're going to try and make a play, but Humanoid's already backed off. And that is a good tower push for Misfits.
Yeah, really well done, Misfits. So this is where they're leveraging the 1-3-1 of their composition. We talked a little bit earlier about what they could do, and trying to just split up the map that early on could be difficult, because they haven't quite broken down these tier 2s yet, but they're now at a point where they can spread out the map a little bit more. The fact that Lucian has those tires completed, the fact that Soaz has the Trinity Force completed, you talked about it earlier, this split push now really coming online, and Misfits are kind of forcing Splyce to stay separated. And I guess thinking more about it, if Misfits start the Baron, that's the biggest risk they could have, because then you're almost forcing Splyce into a 5 versus 5, which you kind of want to avoid.
Well, you definitely do when your life is on the line as well in terms of your playoff contention. You know, they're sitting in the lower half of the table at 7 and 9. Play up against Splyce today, play up against G2 tomorrow, and really need to get to that 9-win breakpoint if they're going to stand a chance of getting into playoffs. You can see Schalke just above them at 8 and 8, but Schalke play Rogue tomorrow, so 9 wins is very much what you want to get towards. And even Splyce, you know, they're still trying to wait here, but Northscaven has been caught out in his own jungle. Hexagolden comes down as well. He's been ignited. Final order for Maxlaw will get the kill, and that's the pick that you can get from vision control.
Exactly that. Get vision, look for picks, and now they can start the Baron. They have a numbers advantage. Poppy is towards the bot side. If they get his teleport out as well, then they're going to be in a great position, but they don't actually commit to it. They just kind of draw Splyce near. They're saying, come, check the Baron. But Splyce, they're not taking the bait.
No, don't need to. They had a farsight alteration in the back of the pit. They know it had been stopped. Now stopped. Sorry, stop it is not a word. Stopped. The pink ward comes in as well from Misfits. So now they will know. Splyce will have no idea of exactly what's going on around that Baron pit. But Splyce still willing just to wait it out. They are not too hasty at the current time.
Slowly dragging words out.
It's because I was going to say at the moment, and I realized I had just said at the moment. So you can't say the same thing twice in a row, Reddit. It's like saying time and time again. Someone will go on Reddit and say, every time we hear the casters talk, they say time and
every
time
time
again.
It's just time and time
and
again.
time
Like,
again.
I can't remember the last time I couldn't hear time. It was ridiculous.
So let's talk about vision control, because we don't
Yeah, we talked
often
about that
talk
last time, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Time and time again, you see these control wards coming in. I actually like it. 4 control wards from Splyce around
Just
the
like a
Baron pit.
clock, you know?
Yep.
4 point... Anyway, so, Misfits like to just maintain vision control around the Baron, because what they want to do is threaten Splyce and say, hey, we might be starting this, come check. Ooh. You know, be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And this forces Splyce to come into the jungle, which is where they run the risk of getting picked. Soaz is now at a point where he just hard smashes Vizicachi in the 1v1. So as you can see, Vizicachi's like, this kind of sucks. But he does have the disengage ultimate, so he can get away from that situation. But it means that Soaz constantly has pressure in the bot side. Fibberman's going to keep wave clearing in the top, and because he has teleport, he doesn't mind sitting in a side lane, and if he draws someone up near, it means the Splyce is happier to start the fight. But I love the fact that Misfits hasn't actually started the Baron yet, because they don't have a tank to actually tank this one up. And while you may think Fiddlesticks is decent for that, when he has no ability power, he doesn't really have the same sustain that he would if he was, say, in the jungle.
Fast alteration is just being used. There's 3 of them on the side of Splyce now, just to continue. Actually, sorry, only 2 of them to continue to sweep out towards that Baron, try and spot out if Misfits have started it up. Misfits will get the scuttle grab. Maybe we'll go for it now as Hansama orders it. Gula there tanking it up. Northscaven on his way as well, but doesn't have a pink ward, so can just put a normal ward in. Immediately gets the vision swept away by that control.
This is my issue right now. That okay, finally they're starting the fight.
We'll jump away, there's the crosswind from Gorilla. Kobe has the flank position here though. Look at that Vayne, he hasn't had any damage done to him yet. Xerxes jumping onto the backline. Gorilla's gonna ball. Kobe gets the first kill and the World Ender will keep Xerxes alive. Chachi jumping in with the teleport as Northscaven still on the chase. Forbidden's gonna use the glacial path to get away. Soaz has TP'd up towards the top side here as well, but he's down to half HP. And Splyce get a 1-for-0 trade in their own jungle.
So Misfits, they end up going for a haphazard fight, and Splyce is very quick to punish them. The issue that I had here with Misfits is they were just allowing Splyce to walk into the jungle that Misfits just had full control of. They then look to go for a fight after the vision has already been cleared out, and they even go for an engage onto the Braum as well. So you'll see here, Northscaven is just like, I'm fine, I can clear this out. Azir isn't that far away, Kobe quickly moves through as well. So there's no real numbers advantage here, and Poppy has the much better teleport than the Yorick does as well. So Vizicachi's in the front line, Kobe's safe on the back line, Xerxes soaks up all the damage, allowing his ultimate to just tick through, and then the rest of Misfits, they're too squishy, they don't have Soaz there, who doesn't really want a team fight either, and it ends up in disaster. So Misfits go for the worst possible time to try and force a fight, and Splyce, once again, very quick to punish Misfits.
Felt like Misfits were trying to force a skirmish, and Splyce were very willing to take a full-on team fight if it came about. 2 items complete on the Vayne, almost 3 items on Humanoid now as well. Splyce are only getting stronger as this game continues to stall out. 4,000 gold between the 2 teams, but it's only a tenth of what the teams have in their back pockets, so not a monumental advantage at all.
I mean, the biggest difference right now is between the 80 carries. Hansama, level 14 to the 13 of Kobe. He has a full item over the enemy Vayne. Here we go. Misfits now actually starting up the Baron. No teleport on Chachi, and he's just been spotted bot. This is the perfect time for Misfits to start off the Baron. Splyce have spotted it out.
10,000 HP on it. Splyce spotted it out. They're going for the run. They're going for the fight here as Forbidden comes down on the Lissandra as well. 6,000 HP left on the Baron. Splyce, you've got to go for it. You've got to go for the fight. Otherwise, Misfits will get this one too easily. Forbidden forced out. 2,000 HP on the Baron as Misfits look to secure it. Lots of damage come out from Gorilla as the Crow comes down. Northscaven just about gets back to the back of the pit. Xerxes, Wild Ender will keep him alive for the moment. Humanoid tries to jump in. He shuffles. He dives in. Gets Soaz. Kobe cleans up 2 on the back line as well. And somehow, once again, Splyce come out on top.
And a classic Misfits Baron. They try to go for this when Vizicachi's in the bot lane. They think that they can just commit to the Baron, but they don't respect the damage from Azir in a confined Baron space. Splyce come out massively in this fight. They secure the Baron, and all of a sudden, the game flips on its head. So I want you to keep your eyes on both Xerxes initially, right? Notice how he's on the backline here. And what he's going to do is he's going to zone Featherburn out of the fight, keep him busy, draw his farm, and then Maxwell joins. Now you have a 2v1 versus a 3v3. So the two damage dealers of Humanoid and Kobe are free to go up against the backline of Misfits in this situation, and they can't deal with the range of Azir. They can't deal with the damage coming out from the Vayne. And ultimately, I just think that the target focus in that final fight just wasn't optimal. Misfits were like, or Maxlaw and Featherburn saying, we can't let the Smite get into the pit, when the reality was, the rest of Misfits were trying to fight. The Baron wasn't the focus in this situation.
I think you just need to look at the summoner spells left for Splyce. Cleanse still on Humanoid, Cleanse still on Kobe. They didn't even need to use it in that fight, showing that Misfits really couldn't get onto that backline. Humanoid even has a Banshee's Veil now. Phantom Dancer finished on Kobe, and Splyce can just continue to pressure forward with this Baron. And
now we've hit the late game, and note that Misfits are grouped up as a 4-man unit, and this is the situation that Splyce are happy to be in as they look to force another fight.
Xerxes going, Chachi going in, Xerxes was on the front line as well. Kobe was coming down from the top lane. Tower didn't quite fall in the mid lane as Misfits forced back. There's a Cloud Drake for them if they want it, but Kobe now going to push in mid, all of Splyce. They've got the mid prio. Chachi's going down towards the bottom lane.
Look at the rest of the Misfits. They're actually following up from behind Soaz, and they're looking to push in towards the inhibitor. The rest of Splyce have chosen not to back yet. It's only Poppy. Are they actually going to try for a
trying to catch Chachi
here?
here. Hexagon Maiden comes down. He's already down to about half HP. Hansama jumps across the wall. Chachi with the hammer doesn't connect, and Hansama will take him out. The tower's going to fall as well. Look at the base race. No, they're going for it. And Splyce have to back off. They can't push any further forward. The inhibitor goes down. A great call from Misfits. Their playoff hopes on the line. They make the base race stick.
And they successfully walk away with a Baron. That could have ended much worse for Splyce, but really quick decision-making there coming out from Misfits results in them coming out with the advantage. Now they've got their eyes on Norscaran. No flash, no heal, but I think he should be safe. He's actually baiting them in here.
Glacial Fissure used, slows Maxlaw. You can see Humanoids coming in from the flank as well, but Splyce unable to find the fight. Norscaran didn't have the Baron buff. He died in the initial fight for that, so he didn't have the fast recall the rest of his team did. But Misfits going to get their third Drake of the game now as Soaz takes it down.
So that play... Ooh, hang on. Ooh,
Hansama, you can't get caught out like this. Humanoid just takes him out.
There was a control ward in the bush. Neither Misfits players checked it. They get spot out, and now the AD carry is dead. 40 seconds, he's unavailable. Splyce group up mid with the Baron. Azir in the top lane. Poppy, no teleport available yet, but you've got to deal with the super minions anyway. As 4 members of Splyce took to siege into the base of Misfits.
So it looked like he was going towards that bottom lane, but instead he's going to back and join up with his team. Tower falls in the top lane. Splyce equalize that turret score, have about a 2,500 gold lead now. You've got a massive Azir, you've got a huge Vayne as well. Can Misfits defend? Still 15 seconds remaining before Hansama is back in the fight. Humanoid just ordering that tower down. Chip damage, piece by piece. Splyce are trying to break open the base of Misfits.
I feel like that last play from Misfits was what they kind of wanted to be doing earlier.
Yeah.
You know, you control the vision around Baron, and then you have Yorick just constantly split pushing bot. And then you force Splyce to come and check the Baron as a potential risk, and then you just rely on the Yorick to just keep pushing. And then when Splyce come and face check the Baron, you look for a pick, you look for a kill. Then you maybe look for a fight. Then you actually try and force that objective. But instead, they were a little too quick on the mark. They didn't quite set up optimally, and the mid-game still a bit of an issue, very clearly, from the side of Misfits. And up against Splyce, that's always a risk, because once you reach that 35-minute mark, it was Xerxes that said around week 4, week 5, once we get to 35 minutes, we don't lose. Only G2 is the team that could maybe stand a chance with us past this point. Now, that was a while back. Things have obviously changed since then, but that is still the same. Splyce, still a very good late-game team. They are very good at team fighting, and the pressure falls on Misfits. Can they play the map well enough to still stand a chance of winning this game?
So Soaz has teleport. He's down towards the bottom side. Splyce looking to force a fight here as Norscaran and Xerxes come in from the flank. Humanoid and Chachi going all the way around, though. He's spotted out on this control ward. Is Soaz going to TP in? That's the question. He's still pushing down towards that bottom lane. Misfits maybe needs to take the fight as Maxwell tries to jump in. It's Kobe, but he goes invisible with the final hour. Stunned up, locked up. He cleanses away, and Maxwell falls. Kobe's just going to open up hell on Misfits. They got caught out and they lose 3 players incredibly quickly. So is still pushing in this bottom lane, but you have to feel there's not too much he can do.
There's not too much he can do. The Vayne is on his way back, Poppy on the way back as well, and Splyce just demolished Misfits in that fight. We've talked all game about it. It was a 4 versus 5. Misfits chose to turn and burn. They thought that if they could just nuke Kobe, they could still stand a chance, but unfortunately it was not enough. Splyce come out ahead, but the question is, can they break into the base of Misfits? The top lane wave is pushing, but the Baron has ran out, and Splyce, rather than overcommit, they're actually going to choose to reset. So let's have a look at this. They can see Vizicachi coming in on the flank, and they go, you know what? Let's just attack Kobe. He's by himself right now. The rest of the team aren't in there, but a good ultimate from Chachi actually knocks Lucian out. So it ends up being a 3v5, but I don't even know if that would have made a difference, because honestly, Kobe, he could not be killed. With the Brawn protection, with the cleanse in there as well, that Vayne was literally unkillable.
And we've always talked about Kobe as one of these incredibly consistent AD carries, but I think this split, he's really stepped to the fore for Splyce.
At least in the second half for me. He's really stood up once the pressure has started to mount for the teams. And if anyone is going to take Splyce to that second place, it will be him, as we see both teams grouping up once again.
Chachi in there, Soaz is the front line. Very tanky on that yard, knocked up Xerxes. Forced out to about half HP. Chachi now with the Hexagon Maiden's going to knock him out. 3 members go flying. And Splyce do just reset the fight. Chachi down to about a 3rd HP. Xerxes going to back away as well. Still has that GA if the fight does erupt, but the Baron now on the cards for Splyce. They just want to get that vision control, have some deep wards into the Misfits jungle, and could try and pull Misfits out of position. Humanoid, front lining, pushes Soaz back with the shuffle. Soaz will flash. Forbidden could have gone in with the Glacial Path. I'm not sure. Misfits knew they were in a 4v5. I'm not sure they knew that Xerxes had backed off.
Keeping an eye on what ultimates have been used, given that the Baron is going to be started soon. Humanoid unavailable, Kobe unavailable, Vizicachi unavailable as well.
So pings from Misfits actually coming out on this inhibitor. They have double teleport. If Splyce take too long, Misfits could go for the super minion double teleport into the Splyce base.
That's very, very true.
It is a possibility. Elder Dragon up in 40 seconds as well. Baron live for these two teams.
Yorick, look at him. Keep an eye on Soaz as he makes his way towards the bot lane. Poppy is following him as well. Misfits fully committing to, you know what? We cannot team fight this team at all. We have to split push. Hansama 2 levels behind Kobe right now. There's no way they're going to win this 5v5, the 4v4. So all hopes rest on Soaz's shoulders right now for Misfits.
A pivotal moment in this game. Maxwell Forslow still has the GA, but that means you have to back away. Misfits, if they lose this game, are out of the race for playoffs. They will be knocked out by Splyce if they lose. They cannot catch up in terms of head-to-head with the rest of the teams in the race. Elder Dragon live. Splyce going to go across towards it. Kobe will start it up. You can see the tower falling towards that bottom side as well as Kobe gets onto that.
They know.
Elder.
Misfits know that this is happening, so they're committing to the Baron. Smite comes out early for Maxwell to get a bit of HP back, but look at the rest of Splyce on the minimap. You can see they're making their way up. Teleport comes through.
Humanoid is a massive damage dealer in this fight, and Chachi already has the flank position off. Crowstorm used by Gorilla. They're trying to get onto the Azir. Kobe gets the Elder, and now Splyce can just turn and burn through Misfits. Gorilla still alive. Not scared, forced off towards the top of the fight. Xerxes used the Wild End to keep himself alive. Maxwell forced away, still has the GA for Bivin so low.
Here comes
Kobe to join the fight now, and that Vayne can just open up. He flashes straight into the face of Soaz, and he says, meet your maker. Yorick gets the kill. They can go back towards the Baron. You have to feel that's the death knell for Misfits.
Oh, Xerxes, he's trying to keep the backs preoccupied. It looks like Splyce, they're on the hunt. They're looking for some Misfits.
Hansama and Gorilla have nowhere to go. It would be a miraculous play for them to turn it around, but Humanoid just shuffles in and sends Hansama and Gorilla back to the fountain. Teleport comes in for Forbidden. He's looking for the backdoor play. Splyce backing away though. Chachi already on his way back. Forbidden will only get the inhibitor here, and the Baron will go across towards Splyce as well.
So Splyce, they're going to take the safe play. They don't want to try and end it right now. Misfits, the best they can do is secure an inhibitor as Splyce take everything. 35-minute mark. This is the golden hour for Splyce. Let's have a look at this fight. Note that Kobe isn't here. This is the best possible play for Misfits at this time, and it looks like a good flank coming out from Gorilla, but this Banshee's acting out perfectly for Humanoid because the fear can't come down. He's already forced to use the cleanse early, but while Humanoid is forced out of the fight, Chachi and Xerxes are causing terror on the back line. Maxlaw and Febiven are forced to use all of their resources just to kill this front line, and they're just buying time for Kobe to join the fray. The moment he is here, the rest of Misfits are forced to disengage, and while this didn't heavily go in favor or in kills towards Splyce, in terms of damage, Splyce were the ones completely in control.
Misfits just couldn't get the damage onto the backline. They kept trying to catch Humanoid. They couldn't take him down. Gave Kobe enough time to rejoin the fight. Inhibitor down in that top lane now as Splyce are just going to try and close this one out. You have to feel 9,000 gold, their advantage. Misfits looking for a pick, but they can't find it. And all of Splyce are down towards this bottom side of the map. They're going for a bit of a split. Humanoid pushing out mid, Kobe by himself pushing out this bottom lane, but the fact that Splyce have this vision control just makes it a lot safer for that Vayne.
Level 18 Vayne, level 18 Azir. Both of them 5 items. We are truly at the late game, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where Splyce thrive. Misfits on their last legs. Their hopes of playoffs
dissipating before their eyes.
Thank you for covering me there, medic.
That's all right. I do the words good, you just talk about
exactly that. So here we go. The last line of defense for Misfits right now. What can they do?
Do you pull the trigger? Do you wait it out? Super Minion's pushing up towards that top side now. Gonna get towards those Nexus towers soon. Chachi on the front line takes down the tower for Piven. Forced back by Xerxes. Norskeven's gonna jump in as well, but Misfits have been able to disengage the play. Norskeven tanks up the culling. The inhibitor's still alive, but on the Nexus tower there are minions. Supers, indeed, as Splyce now push in. Misfits have to react, and Splyce can just go towards mid lane. There's a wave there, waiting, ready for them to close this game out. Misfits, you gotta pull the trigger, you gotta do something. But the trigger is pulled by Chachi to knock Hansama away, and Splyce might use that as the opportunity to fight. Maxwell down to about half HP already. Forced away, Norskeven's still tanking up. Misfits just can't get the damage down. Look at Splyce, they're all still incredibly healthy.
Splyce sieging, that's 3rd inhibitor now down. Misfits only have their Nexus towers left. Splyce, it's only a matter of time. Misfits need a miracle to still stand a chance of turning this game around.
The clock is ticking, and every second that passes is just another note in the eulogy for Misfits. They lose this game, they are out of playoffs. Once again, from a great start, they have collapsed in the split. And coming into this split, anyone saying Misfits didn't make it to playoffs would have been laughed off the face of the earth. Splyce are going to put them out of their misery as they go towards these Nexus towers.
Here we go, Splyce on their last legs. They're trying to keep Maxwell from getting onto the flank. He engages.
Only onto Xerxes though, and Xerxes still has the ultimate. Look at the top side of the fight as the Crowstorm comes in. Humanoid forced away. Xerxes down to about half HP. He's gone into the world ender, Forbidden forced away though. But Kobe's just opening up on the backline. Humanoid gets 1. That's the second to follow. Maxwell goes into the GA. Kobe doing everything he can on the backline as Hansama tries to turn it around, but 2 kills go across the Humanoid and Splyce. Just picking away at the Misfits health bars. Norskeven down. Can Hansama do something? Can he revive this team from the grave?
It's still a 4 versus 3 for Chachi on the front line. Kobe very low.
Xerxes doesn't have the ultimate. The Nexus tower's gonna fall though, and now it's all on Hansama. He has to do something, but he just can't do anything. Kobe gonna take down the Nexus, and Splyce continue their fight for 2nd place.
And with a Splyce victory here, this eliminates Misfits from the playoffs race. Things looked fantastic for Misfits in the early game, but in the mid game they just couldn't quite convert the lead into a game victory. And Splyce, they held the line, they bought time, they found those small punishments, they found those small windows, and they got to the point where their carries could come online. Humanoid and Kobe in the late game. But you've got to acknowledge what Xerxes and Vizichachi were doing as well. Every single fight they were on to people like Febiven, just keeping him preoccupied. No, I will not let you get your CC onto my Vayne. No, I will not let you threaten my 2 carries. And they were dishing out some decent damage themselves. So this is why Splyce is so terrifying in the team fights. Everyone knows their responsibilities. Everyone knows what they need to do in order to win, and they pull it off perfectly every single time.
And even if you get a big early game lead against them, they can hold on to the game. You referenced Leonidas. It was like the Battle of Thermopylae for Splyce. They held the line, they held the hot gates, and eventually they were able to turn it around on Misfits. Of course, commiserations to Misfits getting knocked out of playoffs. They still have G2 to face tomorrow, but I think they'll be taking a long, hard look at the second half of their split and thinking, where did it all go wrong?
Yeah. Nothing but disappointment for the side of Misfits, as they had high expectations coming into the split. You said it. Anyone saying that this team wouldn't make it to playoffs would be laughed at. I was one of the people thinking that this team would be challenging for a top spot, top 3 by the end of the split.
I was there as well, Vedius.
People had a lot of faith in this roster. Unfortunately, it just hasn't come together. Whereas Splyce, the team that many often underestimate, they had definitely a slow start, but they did what Splyce always do. They went 1-1 throughout the entirety of the split. They held their own. They were going even. They just sat in the middle of the pack. They beat the teams below them. They often lost to the teams above them. But they weren't struggling. They were just a solid team. But then as we reach week 7, week 8, week 9, it seems like they found their identity. It feels like that they knew exactly what they needed to do in order to find wins, and they're able to pull it off. And props to Kobe. This guy has been stepping up massively over the last few weeks of the LEC, and he's going to be a terrifying player to deal with as they make their way into playoffs.
He definitely is. If you guys thought Kobe, Humanoid, or Xerxes had a strong performance, and all of them did, be sure to vote for them in the Kia Player of the Game vote at LOL Esports on Twitter. And I just think, like, we talk about Splyce so often as this consistent team that beats the teams below them, loses to the teams above them. This is their 6th playoffs in a row. Like, they have made 6 playoffs in a row. Only Fnatic and G2 have better records out of our teams in our league at the moment. It's very consistent from them. Very strong performance all around. Later today, we do have our match of the century, Fnatic versus G2. It's the 3rd game of the day. You won't want to miss it because Vedius and I are casting. But for more on Splyce's win, here's Law with Kobe.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Kobe, for joining me. Another victory for you guys, but I gotta ask, this is a win, but you were playing on hard mode here. I mean, Vayne into Lucian, what is it about?
So I think we drafted a bit too much for the late game here. The plan was just to get a scaling bot lane and win the mid 2v2 that way and survive. But it's not something we tried too much, but I felt pretty comfortable. We can take the matchup and maybe lose a bit early, but after 20 minutes, if they don't have a huge lead, we'll just win.
And it was effective. And I gotta ask, we've seen more and more of Vayne lately, especially on 9.5. But when you look at it, the champion wasn't changed, and the core build of Vayne is still the same. So why do you think we're seeing more of Vayne now?
I mean, I'm not sure. I just really like the champion. And I think if you're really good on Vayne, you can put it out in more matchups than you maybe think. Because many people, they think that Vayne is really weak and has no early game, but you actually have some really strong moments if you just know when to strike through, you know. But I mean, the build is just, when you have 2 items, you're like a hyper carry already. So I really like the build as well.
And we saw that in the game. I'm gonna ask you to turn your back to the screen because there's some replay I wanna show you. We are like 25 minutes into the game. Misfits engage the Baron. Visit Chachi is bot lane and there's no way he can TP in. And still, you guys take the 4v5. Tell me about it.
So Fiddlestick ults in here, and he's basically just zoning our front line. I don't know what's happening with Xerxes, but I was kind of worried they would finish the Nash here because I think they could get it, maybe a 50-50. But I don't know, they stop it for some reason, and I'm not really sure what else happens here. Because Xerxes is just fighting 1v2, while I'm standing with Braum and hitting some people, so it was a bit messy. I wasn't too sure what was happening.
Yeah, a bit messy, but you got it right in the end. Thank you for your insights, Kobe. And for more on this game, let's send it over to Shox for post-game.
Thank you very much, and I think Kabi kind of exclaims what we all were thinking. Why would you stop the Baron? With that, Misfits are now officially out of playoffs. There is no way for them to get back in there, and Splyce still hold firm in that 2nd place. Now, there is obviously a lot to unpack, so let's start with the game and the picks and bans. And before we do, I just want to urge us not to rewrite history and not to do results-based analysis, because you guys all agreed that Misfits had a good draft and you didn't even mind the Fiddlesticks before the game.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some things in here, right? Like the Fiddlesticks, and it's very lane dominant here, I would say, for the side of Misfits. The problem is they're going to be on a timer here because you need to force things in the mid game, because when you look at the other side, Splyce went heavy on the scaling.
Yeah, and then you said, Ara, well, it's the only way to beat them. You just got to go a bit harder in the early game because late game you have no chance versus Splyce.
I mean, when you are not that great of a team, you should just punish their weaknesses. And in terms of Splyce, they have such a good mid to late game. So just draft an early game comp and try to abuse that. They did that, but then in the barn, that even Kobe didn't understand it. Like, they could have ended the barn. They have Fiddlestick, who will probably like fear Aatrox for like a couple of seconds. Then you have Lissandra, who can ultimate Aatrox and just CC him for 4 to 5 seconds and just end the barn. But instead of that, they tried to re-engage when it was not a good idea.
Yeah, we will take a look at a lot of those moments in just a second, but I do want to also, well, bring the attention to the fact that the early game was a lot of such good moves from Misfits. That was kind of the Misfits that was methodical as we used to know them. They made all the right moves. They got all the right objectives. They did great in the top lane. They even got Hansama a couple of kills and that tower. So, you know, the stage can't be set more perfectly for you to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely worked, right? But when you look at what Splyce have on the other side, it's a kite-back comp with heavy scaling in the Vayne plus the Azir. And that means in these sort of situations inside of their own jungle, when it's Misfits over-committing into them, into this comp that wants to kite back, they're just going to get destroyed here.
All right, here's this Baron.
Yeah, this is exactly Baron that I said. I really think they can CC Cersei. Baron is 2.5k. They can insta-shot it if they CC Aatrox. And just get the Baron on a 50-50, and then just let Yorick a split push. Because Yorick versus Poppy is a good matchup.
It is, and I think this all comes down to the issues we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, the trouble in finding that synergy in that all-star lineup, and I think it showed last week versus Schalke 04, where that Baron is something we never want to see again. But every point of decision-making where it needs to be decisive in terms of taking a step towards the victory is where Misfits falter and falter once again today.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they are at the sort of crux moment in the game, right? And they know they have to make a play, they just make the wrong play. So you look last week and they're staying on a Baron the whole time when it's coming down to a 50-50 and they just get slaughtered at the back end. We see a very similar situation right here where they decide, hey, we actually need to turn off of this Baron and look for a team fight. But that actually just wasn't the right call here because they were so against the clock in this game, they had to go for the 50-50. And because they didn't, not only did they not get the Baron, but they also just got decimated in the team fight.
They actually tried to engage into Braum. Azir was completely fine in that team fight, and if Azir can free damage on a team fight, you're really on pain, like you're really on a danger. And this is exactly what happened. Also, I want to point on something that Kobe said on the interview. He said he doesn't really understand what's going on with Vayne. The thing is, Vayne right now, since Galio is such a prior pick as support, Vayne is really good versus Galio. We've seen that in LCK a lot of times, but I can't really understand how can Vayne work versus Lucian and Fiddlestick, two of the best early game bot laners.
It doesn't matter because it's Kavi. That's all we got to say. This guy, and I know you said Kavi didn't even do that much in this game, but hey, he didn't do anything. And he claims
he didn't do anything this game.
Well, I do want to end everything with kind of also singing the praises of Splyce because this is often something we forget when a team loses a game in this fashion. But this team again brings another win to the board with this guy. What are you going to point out?
So he had before in the pre-game we had a 44% damage from Kobe. This game he had 18%.
So what
he didn't do anything.
No,
come on.
All right, you have to see it this way. He does exactly the needed amount of damage to win the game. That's what it is. No, but I do feel you. But I do want to sing the praises of this Splyce as a lineup as a whole. We said before the game that we were all excited about this lineup for the first time in very long. A couple of the guys behind you, Visit Chachi, Xerxes, Humanoid, they are just finding each other in a way that I think you would have thought they wouldn't find each other. You think Misfits would be that all-star lineup, but the tables have turned, and Splyce is the strongest team here today.
I mean, I just can't understand Chachi brain, okay? You come to a pick that you have the last pick. You're playing versus Yorick. Yorick is actually countered by Jax, by maybe Renekton, by really heavy bruisers like Irelia. And then you pick Poppy. And he's actually the only guy in the world who can blind pick a Poppy, actually do fine, and then in teamfights he will have some clutch moment when he will ultimate everyone on a team fight and he will win the game by that.
Remember what was it, the dragon fight? Was it last year? Yeah, so you don't have to hit any of those, just the one that matters.
Just the one in the clutch mode.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, that brings us back to the fact those clutch players, those clutch moments, and that clarity in the moments where you need to win the game is what we need, is lacking for Misfits. We will see them back in summer. It remains to be seen what roster we will see because, I mean, I don't want to step on anyone's toes here. You are a coach. You have a lot of experience. If this happens with a lineup, how much time do you give a lineup like that you've invested in so much? Would you change something or would you stay the same?
I mean, I have no idea what's the problems they have on Misfits right now. For example, something that Ender was saying is in the Baron calls, so many times they had to end it, they don't end it, they actually try to initiate. When they have to initiate, they actually try to end it. So I believe the main problem they have is such a variety of experienced people, and they will probably give all of them their information or their thoughts about the game that right now we can end the Baron, another one will say, no, we cannot end, we have to go on them. So there is a mix from knowledge there that I think is really hard to fix it. Probably the best way you can try to do that is by trying to get rookies, trying to get like really skilled players around veteran players. But that's kind of how every single team is being worked around. But for Misfits, they all have like veteran players that it doesn't seem to work.
It's too much, yeah. Does it seem to?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of look at this team, right? And what do they need? They need someone to come in and just make a call that the everyone else will follow up. So, like, to me, that's like, oh, you need a strong veteran shot caller, maybe someone like Gorilla, perhaps. Well, they have that, and it's still not working for this team.
Why Gorilla and not Maxlor? Or maybe Faviven?
Why not?
Or maybe Soas?
Of course. I mean, it's we obviously don't really know what the exact issues are. All we can say is it hasn't worked so far. They're out of playoffs. And Splyce, however, are still in the running for second place off the back this time of the Kia player of the game, Humanoid. With 54% of the votes, Ara is going to be happy because he said Kabi does not deserve it. And it is Humanoid that walks away with the Kia player of the game. Now, coming up next, SK Gaming look to take a huge win in the race for playoffs as they go up against Rogue. We'll be right back.